Hello and good morning, friends. Today I want to talk to you about septic tanks, right? I want to talk to you more specifically about what is a septic tank, how do they work, where are they at. Everybody's always scared of septic systems, thinking that they're super expensive, they're scary, they're hard to maintain, they're difficult to deal with, and I want to help to prove that that's a common misconception, right? Let's get into it. So, septic tanks, right? Why would you have a septic tank and not have public sewer? Well, the first and easiest answer for that is cost, right? Public sewer is a very expensive product. It takes a lot of money and a lot of work to get that infrastructure installed on a residential road, right? Not only do you have to dig down, but you have to make access points all along that road for the homeowner to connect to, right? Additionally, on top of that, let's say you cross a major interstate. Now, you have to repave the road. You also have to close off the traffic. You have to pay for the traffic maintenance people, the people who control when people come and go, right? And on top of that, time, right? It's very time consuming to do something of that size. So generally, public sewer will be available wherever you have higher taxes, as well as wherever there's enough people to support the cost of that infrastructure. It'll take a city a very long time to pay back that initial investment, right? So once the city puts that in, they want to make sure that they can get their money back. It might take 10 years, but they want to make sure they get it paid at some point, right? If you don't live in a higher taxed area or an area that's got enough people to support that cost, you're going to get stuck with what's called a septic system, or you could also refer to it as an OSDS, right? It's on-site sewage disposal system. Fancy way of saying a box where all your poo goes, right? So over the course of many decades and years, the evolution of a septic tank has changed, right? Originally, it would just be a outhouse, a privy, right? Just a hole in the ground with a little wooden toilet, and that's where you went and you did your business, right? From there, we transitioned into what's called cesspools, right? It was just a pit that was essentially built just like you would build a hand-dug well. And what you would do is you would just let all the toilet flushing, all the good stuff, go into it, and that's where everything would settle out. There'd be no separation of solids, there'd be no filtering of any of the debris. It's just kind of a big pit. Everything goes in there, sits, and does its thing, right? After a while, we started to realize that that's probably not the best way to do it, right? And so then people started to do septic tanks. And essentially what a septic tank is just a big concrete box. Generally in our area, they're gonna be 8x4 or 10x5, and they'll usually be about 5 or 6 feet total height, right? So what'll happen is you build a house, or sometimes you build the tank first. You figure out how big of a house you wanna build. And then from there, you try to figure out how big of a tank you need, right? So modern standards is you generally want to have 2x whatever your daily flow is supposed to be. So in Maryland, the way that we calculate that is, let's say you want to build a 4-bedroom home. Well, we assume 2 people per bedroom, so that would equate to about 600 gallons of water total per day. And remember, we need 2x that amount. So that would mean the minimum size tank that you could put on that house would be a 1,200 gallon tank. Well, modern code with Maryland regulations requires 1,500 gallons on all new systems. So now you get the 1,500 gallon tank. Even though you've got a 4-bedroom house, you're technically built up to where you could accommodate a 5-bedroom house, right? So it's a win-win, but it does have an added cost of now you're paying for a bigger tank when you don't necessarily need one. So whole nother conversation for a different day, but let's continue down this track, right? So you've got your tank. The tank, its sole purpose is to capture solids, right? So if you flush that toilet, all that water plus the stuff goes into this box. The point of the box is to have the solids fall to the bottom as your sludge. You have your effluent in the middle, and you'll have scum on top. So you're gonna get 3 distinct layers in that tank to help separate out the solids. I'm gonna have a visual above to where you can see what I'm talking about. In the tank, you're generally gonna see at least 2 access points, but most commonly you'll see 3, right? You'll see a lid on the front, the middle, and the back. The purpose of these lids is you wanna have a lid over the inlet, so that way if something gets stuck, the inlet is going to be the pipe between the home and the tank, so that way if something gets stuck, you're able to dislodge whatever it is. The lid in the middle is designed as a maintenance hatch, right? So you can pump out all of the solids. When you pump a tank, it's very important to make sure you get all 4 corners to limit how many solids work their way out of the tank and into the absorption system. And then you're going to want to have an access point on the rear of the tank for the outlet line. And the reason why is the outlet line is the conveyance line that takes the water from the tank to the drain fields. We'll cover drain fields in another conversation, all right? So in the tank, you're going to have these 3 access points. Generally, how that'll be accessible is going to be a 6-inch PVC cleanout, a 24-inch round ring, or sometimes you'll see 32 or 36-inch risers. A cleanout is generally referred to as, and it's 6 inches, between 4 inches and 6 inches. One of the smaller PVC pipes, cast iron pipes, terracotta pipes. They come in a variety of colors and shapes and compositions, right? A riser is going to be referred to something that a person can fit into, right? A manhole size hole on the tank. Those also come in a variety of shapes, colors, and sizes. Most commonly nowadays, you will see that people use plastic. The reason why is it's a lot more user-friendly, right? If you hit it with a lawnmower, you'll break it, not your mower. But you can also make sure you get a nice watertight seal on that system. Additionally, repairs are a little bit simpler because they're modular. So like with a plastic riser, if you smack the top part, okay, you just fix that top part. You don't have to fix the whole thing. If you have a 3-foot concrete ring and you break the top of the concrete ring, guess what? Now you have to replace all 3 feet of that concrete ring. Not as fun, right? In the tank, you're also going to see these things called baffles. You might be saying, well, what is a baffle? I've heard about these baffles before. I don't know what they are. So you're going to have 2, maybe 3 if you have a 2-chamber tank, but again, another conversation, right? So we're looking right now at a 1-chamber tank. So in the front of the tank, you're going to have the inlet baffle. The purpose of the inlet baffle is to slow everything down, right? You want to have nice, smooth water coming into the tank so we can get nice separation of the solids. So the baffle in the front of the tank is going to prevent all that debris from stirring the soup. The purpose of that is from the moment you flush that toilet to the moment that water gets to the tank, you should get roughly 2 days before that water exits the tank so we can get good clarification of the liquid. The back of the tank is going to have a baffle as well. They will look identical, except for the function's different, right? So in our state, a front baffle is not required. It is when you install it, but like if it falls off during the normal course of business, it's not that big of a deal. The back baffle, super important, right? Its sole purpose is to prevent all that floating stuff, the scum, from getting into the pipe and causing a clog, right? So if you run into an issue where, let's just say you have a concrete back baffle, the sewer gas corrodes it, and that baffle falls off, well, now you have the open pipe to where all that water can go in, and it can actually cause clogs or damage to your drain fields, which you don't want to do. So when you get your tank pumped, it's very important to make sure that whoever's pumping your tank is actually looking, is that baffle still there, right? Any good pumper in Maryland's going to do that. If they're not looking for it, hire somebody else. They're not worth your time, right? Because if they don't care about checking your system, they're not going to basically be doing a good job pumping out your tank. So you want to go with somebody who does care enough to look, right? So the tank, its sole job, capture solids, right? This is a complicated job, but most of the systems are gravity fed. If you don't have a gravity fed system, you might have a pump chamber. You might also have what's called a BAT. We covered BATs the other day, right? Most of the systems nowadays are going to be 2 chambers. At least in Maryland, they're all going to be 2 chambers, but you still do come across 1-chamber tanks. 1 chambers are the most common, simplest, easiest to find. And the reason why we've been switching from 1-chamber tanks to 2-chamber tanks, no matter how well you pump out that tank, a little bit of debris will work its way into the drain fields. That little bit of debris will eventually cause the drain fields to fail. Well, with a 2-chamber tank, that little bit of debris that comes from the first chamber goes to the second chamber, and then that little bit goes to the drain field. So you should, in theory, get a significantly longer lifespan out of your trenches. In a future video, we'll discuss effluent filters and other preventative maintenance and methods that you can take to prevent that debris from getting into your drain fields. But today I wanted to focus specifically on 1-chamber septic tanks. What do they look like? How do they work, right? So let's talk composition. Most septic tanks nowadays, and even back in the day, like 1960s and so, would have been made out of concrete. Now, concrete is the most reliable and simplest to work with, right? They're all roughly the same size. You can control the mixture, you can control how strong it is and how it's built. But there are some other brands that are out there as well, right? So some of the other common types of septic tank that you'll see are plastic, cinder block, and metal, right? You can also see fiberglass, but in Maryland, at least, you don't really see fiberglass that often. So the most common beyond concrete would be plastic, I'm not a huge plastic fan. I think that they are a little bit worse as far as like general maintenance goes. Like if you screw up the pump out range, if you don't pay attention to it and you drive over top of it, you could crush it, and it can get very expensive very quickly. Whereas concrete, if you forget about it or you mess it up, it's a lot more resilient. Cinder block, not safe. The structural composition of those is unknown. Back in that time period when they were building that sort of system, would have been before 1965. Most of those tanks, there was nobody really regulating who did or how they built those things. So Maryland State does not let you do cinder block tanks anymore. Metal tanks are even older than that. I've only ever really seen them on houses from the 40s and 50s. The problem with that, sewer gas is really corrosive and it chews up the metal, and eventually that metal collapses again. And then you got people falling into metal tanks, and that's not a good time for anybody involved, right? So hopefully this was helpful, right? I want to start a dialogue with everybody, make sure we're all growing together, we're learning about the world of well and septic. Hit this like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, tell me, what kind of tank do you have? Do you have a concrete tank? Do you have a plastic tank? Do you maybe still have a cinder block tank, right? The state's not gonna come knocking on your door to get your cinder block tank taken away, but hopefully, if you have some information to share, maybe some insight from how your property works and what you've got going on at your house, leave the comment below. It might help somebody out in the future. Hopefully you enjoy this kind of content. I look forward to talking to you guys soon. Take care, guys.